Moving into the suburban neighborhood in early 2023, I expected peaceful mornings and quiet evenings. What I walked into, however, was a petty dictatorship run by Derek, the HOA president. His rule was one of absurdity, enforcing outrageous fines that left residents feeling more like prisoners than homeowners. A $300 fine for leaving trash cans out for even a minute too long? Absurd. Yet there was Derek, walking around as if he owned the place, from his weathered lawn littered with unpermitted solar panels to the fence that blatantly violated city ordinances. It was clear he was above the rules, fully aware that his power lay in intimidation. My own run-in with him had come only weeks after I moved in, when Derek had slapped me with a $750 fine for installing a smart doorbell camera that was barely larger than the HOA-approved size. I saw red. I attempted to reason with him, showing him the manufacturer specifications on my phone, pleading my case. But Derek merely smirked, chastising me to read the bylaws more carefully as he turned his back. Seething with indignation, I decided then and there that it was time to take him down, a project I would execute meticulously and legally in a way he'd never recover from. My first step was simple. I became the inside man. Derek's first mistake was underestimating me completely. I volunteered for the HOA board, convincing them I was eager to contribute toward a modern digital transformation. For 18 months, I attended meetings, quietly observing Derek as he controlled the board. He showcased his authority through a stream of technical jargon and endless paperwork, all the while ensuring that crucial votes were conducted when most dissenters were absent. I took copious notes, downloaded every meeting minutes file, and saved them all in my cloud storage, biding my time. I planned to outlast Derek, waiting for the moment when I could implement much-needed reforms. Then I discovered Derek's second mistake. He wasn't just a bully, he was a thief. He often boasted about running the HOA like a Silicon Valley startup. But with HOA fees that would double the rates of neighboring communities, where exactly was our money going? Our gym remained under renovation for months, and the so-called smart security system was perpetually offline. Questions arose during meetings, but Derek shut them down with smooth responses. Cybersecurity upgrades, he'd say casually, but I felt something was amiss. Determined to find out where our money was disappearing to, I began investigating in earnest. Derek, as the treasurer, controlled all accounts but guarded the financial details with the ferocity of a sentry protecting a vault. I made a formal request for financial records, which he was legally required to provide. Weeks turned into a frustrating buzz of silence. No documents appearing, no answers coming. That's when I began to gather allies in the neighborhood, understanding that to fight an enemy like Derek, I needed numbers. Building the case meant connecting with neighbors and sharing my concerns. Derek, sensing unrest, began scheduling meetings during inconvenient times to minimize pushback. But I was a step ahead. I organized concerned homeowners, gathering their testimonies about Derek's behavior and his selective enforcement of HOA rules. The tide began to shift. When Derek finally relented and shared the financial documents, they turned out to be a digital labyrinth of mislabeled files and incomplete spreadsheets. A $225,000 charge for a smart home integration consulting to a company that existed only in name, and thousands listed as cloud infrastructure maintenance with no supporting documentation. These red flags roused my suspicions. I teamed up with Lucy, our community's resident CPA, and together we examined the documents. The timestamps on many invoices revealed backdating, and as we cross-referenced HOA transactions, the truth unraveled like a badly knotted string. Derek was embezzling funds, routing money through a series of shell companies into his cryptocurrency wallets. He had inflated tech upgrade costs while splitting the difference with a college roommate who ran a questionable IT consulting firm. I compiled everything into a comprehensive digital dossier, complete with blockchain transaction records, surveillance footage of Derek's unauthorized modifications to his yard, and sworn statements from neighbors confirming his selective enforcement of rules. Now it was time for the coup. The annual HOA meeting was typically sparsely attended Zoom calls, but not this time. Through a private WhatsApp group, I led a fireside chat among concerned homeowners, sharing enough evidence to spark their interest and outrage. The meeting arrived, and Derek launched into his predictable self-congratulatory speech, adjusting his collar as he spoke about our digital transformation journey. I interrupted him, choosing that moment to share my screen with the gathering. Could he explain these transaction patterns? I asked, showing them the first of many damning documents. This isn't the appropriate forum, Derek stammered, his webcam image freezing in horror as my evidence unfolded. The chat exploded with comments of shock, anger, and disbelief as once passive neighbors began to unmute themselves, demanding answers. In that moment, I saw Derek's reign unravel before him, and as he attempted to end the call, I smiled. Thanks to my meticulous planning, I had already been designated as co-host. By the end of the meeting, the vote to remove him passed overwhelmingly. It was time for Derek to face the consequences of his actions, though none of us had any idea just how catastrophic the fallout would unfold. As the pixelated images of Derek's shocked face faded from the screen, a wave of exhilaration washed over me. The tension that had lingered in our neighborhood for years had finally shifted, and it felt as if we had toppled the oppressive regime that Derek had built within our HOA. Those moments on the Zoom call, with neighbors rallying together in disbelief at his misdeeds, was our collective step towards reclaiming our community. Once the digital meeting ended, I quickly gathered all my documents, ensuring that my next steps would be as calculated as ever. I was filled with adrenaline, but I knew that anger alone would not suffice. We had ignited a fire, and there was no going back. It was crucial to keep the momentum going. I reached out to the group I had assembled, reminding them that we could not let the matter rest. The real work was about to begin. With Derek's removal from the HOA, the next critical step was to initiate a forensic audit to sift through the financial mess he left behind. The remaining board members, now galvanized by the newfound unity and purpose of our community, were receptive. They seemed relieved to have someone like me, armed with evidence and determination, leading the charge. I knew Derek would see this as a betrayal, his sense of invincibility shattered. As rumors circulated about his removal spreading like wildfire, I could almost hear the echoes of his frustrations. I braced myself for his reaction, knowing he would resort to retaliation. He had always struck me as a man who operated under the belief that he was untouchable. But now, the tides had turned. In the upcoming days, I worked tirelessly with the supporters I had rallied. On one particularly crisp morning, my phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Lucy, the CPA. "We need to meet. I found something major in the records," she texted. My heart raced as I tried to decipher her intent. I didn't realize until that moment how much I craved the unraveling mysteries Derek had left us. I met Lucy at a small cafe just outside our neighborhood. Her normally composed demeanor was replaced with urgency. "I cross-referenced everything we found last week," she began, her voice barely concealing her excitement. "You're not going to believe this. Derek's fraudulent shell companies are tied to his personal accounts. This could implicate him in serious embezzlement charges." As she spread the records across the table, I scanned the documents, each line revealing more than the last. One particular transaction caught my eye. It showed a suspicious payment routed to an account listed under a different name, with Derek's signature stamped approving the invoice. "This is huge," I whispered in disbelief. "It's the evidence we need for the audit and further legal action against him." Lucy nodded, her eyes wide with realization. "If we present this alongside the other findings, it will paint him as both a thief and a manipulator. It puts him directly in the line of fire for embezzlement and fraud, not to mention the violations of local laws." Fueled by a mix of determination and adrenaline, we made preparations to contact a forensic accountant to conduct a thorough audit of the HOA's finances. We needed to act fast and move before Derek had a chance to regroup. His public disgrace would hinge on our speed and precision. As the days turned into weeks, the audit process began, and the sense of community among the neighbors grew. They would drop by my house, bringing snacks and coffee as we compared notes and brainstormed ways to display our findings. Support and camaraderie filled the air as we bonded through our shared purpose of reclaiming our neighborhood. But just as I felt the momentum was on a steady rise, Derek would not let this happen quietly. One evening, As I scrolled through my messages, a notification blinked on my phone. It was an email from the HOA's account. My heart sank as I opened it, reading Derek's insidious words echoing through the screen. As of this day, I'm calling a special meeting to discuss increasing HOA fees due to the supposed financial discrepancies linked to my administration. Anyone caught disclosing the ongoing lawsuit process shall be held accountable. Fear gripped me as the implications sank in. He was trying to silence us with the very authority we had stripped from him. Derek's defiance only fueled the fire inside me. I quickly rounded up our group and shared the email, framing it as another desperate play in a losing game. This is a scare tactic, I urged my neighbors as we gathered around my kitchen table once more. Is counting on us to back down. We can't let fear dictate our actions. We stand united as a community, and we owe it to ourselves to push back even harder. This is not just about Derek. It's about all of us and ensuring we protect our rights as homeowners. Their resolve hardened. We decided to move forward with plans to attend Derek's special meeting en masse, determined to confront him directly and lay out the evidence. This was not just about litigation. It was about taking a stand, about making sure the voice of our community echoed louder than Derek's hollow threats. As the day of the special meeting approached, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Each neighbor committed to showing with their presence that we were no longer afraid. We'd documented everything, notifying local media of our plight, suggesting they might want to cover the story of how a community took back its power. In the days leading up to the meeting, I could feel the tension building. Derek would undoubtedly try to manipulate the narrative with his silver tongue, just as he always had. But he wouldn't be ready for the storm brewing against him. As the day of the special meeting approached, I felt an electric charge hanging in the air. The sense of unity among our neighbors transformed our group into an immovable force. We rehearsed what we would say, crafting our messages carefully to ensure we would expose Derek's misconduct without letting him twist our words. As the evening of the meeting dawned, an array of emotions washed over me. Anticipation mingled with determination. Stepping into the community center, I was struck by the sight of the chairs circling the large table, once a realm of Derek's unchecked authority. Now, it was a battleground where the truth would come to light. I took a deep breath, preparing for the confrontation. The room filled quickly, concerned homeowners coming together, whispering among themselves while glancing at the head of the table where Derek sat, too confident in his own self-importance. Derek launched into his familiar bravado, touting his accomplishments and dismissing any notion of financial mismanagement. As he spoke, I watched the expressions of my neighbors shift from apprehension to determination. He stammered through inflated numbers, trying to allure the room with misleading statistics cloaked in corporate jargon. But we were prepared. When it was our turn to speak, I stood firm. Thank you, Derek, for your report. But there are important discrepancies that need to be addressed. I shared the findings from our forensic audit, revealing Derek's unlawful conduct. My heart pounded as I presented the damning evidence, detailing the questionable transactions and fake companies that he had established to siphon off funds. Gasps filled the room as I exposed the connection between Derek and his shady associates, each revelation striking harder than the last. The air grew thick with tension as I laid the groundwork for a truth that could no longer be buried under his deceit. Why should we trust someone who has blatantly violated HOA bylaws and mismanaged our community funds? I pressed, looking around at the now engaged audience. There were nods of agreement, faux confidence where once stood fear. But Derek, true to himself, attempted to regain control. These accusations are based on misinterpretations and wild conjectures, he shouted, his voice echoing in the hall. I've been managing this HOA with excellence, and now you turn on me? This is nothing short of a witch hunt. I wasn't going to let him derail our resolve. I gestured to my neighbors, who stood ready with their own testimonies. Lucy, standing beside me, took the floor with a commanding presence. We're not here to witch hunt anyone, Derek. We're here to protect our community and our rights. You've consistently cherry-picked rules to serve your interests while penalizing us, and we've had enough. As her words sunk in, the crowd exploded into discussion, the whispers transforming into a crescendo of support. The power had shifted, and Derek's grasp on authority waned with every accusation echoed throughout the room. At that moment, the board members joined our side, finally finding their courage. The remaining board members, tired of Derek's manipulation, began to share their own experiences of being bulldozed by his authoritative tactics. Soon, every eye in the room was focused on Derek, and the confidence he had exuded melted away, replaced by panic. In a move of desperation, Derek attempted to adjourn the meeting, but it was too late. Somebody in the back shouted, "We want to vote." Another jumped in. "Enough is enough. Let's make our voices heard." As votes were cast, the sense of triumph filled the air. Derek was in full retreat, his bravado shattered by the very people he had tried to intimidate. I watched as our neighbors rose to their feet, an army standing against the transgressor who had long twisted their lives with threats and unjust fines. The results of the vote announced there was a landslide decision to initiate a complete audit of Derek's administration and to put him on notice of immediate removal. A resounding cheer erupted, further drowning out Derek's feeble protests. As the community erupted into applause, I felt a warmth spread through me. We had prevailed, not just against Derek, but also against the toxic environment that had suffocated us for far too long. It wasn't just the evidence that won the battle. It was our collective spirit. In the weeks following Derek's downfall, the community came together to forge a new beginning. The new board members were eager to restore trust and transparency while revamping the HOA's policies. As the audit uncovered more evidence of negligence and misconduct, our legal team readied itself to file a suit against Derek. But the best part was how the neighborhood transformed. We organized cleanup days, fundraisers for local charities, and neighborhood barbecues where everyone felt welcome and included. While Derek retreated from the spotlight, rumors about his next move trickled down through town. It wasn't long before we received whisperings that he was attempting to launch his own community consulting agency, likely fabricated, just as his previous endeavors had been. It appeared he still believed he could rise from the ashes of his mistakes. But this time, we were ready. Through our collaborative efforts, we had set a standard for transparency and accountability. I joined forces with Lucy and other members of the neighborhood to create a system of checks and balances, ensuring that no single authority could ever gain such power again. Our HOA began working with external auditors moving forward, ensuring that no one would ever have the opportunity to manipulate our financials again. The darkness that Derek tried to cast over our homes was replaced by a unity that brought bloomed friendships and revitalized community spirit. As I stood in my backyard one evening, the sun dipping below the horizon, I was filled with a unique sense of triumph. It was the power of community action that allowed us to reclaim our neighborhood. We might have started as individuals seeking a peaceful place to live, but we had become a force of solidarity, proving that the strength of many could dismantle the tyranny of one, no matter how petty their dictatorship was. And for Derek, the whispers indicated he had underestimated us all, perhaps realizing too late the true value of community and respect that can't be dictated through fear. As summer began to fade, our community continued to bask in the afterglow of our triumph over Derek. The warmth of camaraderie filled every corner of the neighborhood, fostering friendships that had lain dormant under the weight of fear for too long. We had reclaimed not just our homes but also the spirit of togetherness that had always made our community special, albeit buried under Derek's reign. The air was crisp with the scent of autumn leaves as Lucy and I gathered our ideas for the upcoming neighborhood fair. In the wake of our victory, we wanted to ensure that our celebration was not just a reflection of our recent success, but a series of engaging activities to solidify our newfound bond. Not only would it be a way to bring us closer, but it could also serve as a platform to educate residents on how to maintain an active role in community governance. As the days dwindled leading up to the fair, I found myself reflecting on how our initiative had transformed into something much larger than any of us had anticipated. That spring, the event would have been unthinkable. The fear that had permeated our interactions had been erased, replaced by a collective resolve to shape the future of our neighborhood. On the day of the fair, the town square came alive with laughter, music, and the aromas of homemade treats wafting through the air. Families set up booths showcasing baked goods, local crafts, and games for the kids. Tents flapped in the gentle breeze as neighbors exchanged stories while children giggled, darting among the activities. I couldn't help but marvel at the positive energy radiating through the crowd. It was time for the community meeting, an essential part of the fair. The town hall that had once echoed with Derek's dismissive remarks now buzzed with enthusiastic discussions and hopeful visions for the future. I stood at the front, flanked by Lucy and the new board members, who were eager to embrace openness and collaboration. Thank you all for joining us today. This neighborhood fair is more than an event. It is a symbol of our unity and commitment to a vibrant, thriving community. I began, my voice steady and filled with enthusiasm. Each one of you has played a vital role in our transformation, and today marks the beginning of a new chapter, one of transparency, engagement, and empowerment. Applause erupted as I shared plans for ongoing community engagement, proposed regular meetings, and outlined initiatives for neighborhood safety and youth programs. The room was charged with excitement as ideas flowed freely, with residents suggesting workshops to promote local businesses, organize cleanup efforts, and even discussions about community gardens. But even with our celebrations, the specter of Derek lingered just beyond the periphery of our new beginning. We knew he was still operating in the shadows. His consulting agency had launched, and the whispers around town suggested he was attempting to preen himself as a victim advocating for better governance, trying to win over homeowners who still feared the consequences of speaking against him. One evening, as I was reviewing some of our neighborhood engagement materials, a knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. I opened it to find Mrs. Thompson, a longtime resident and friend to the community. Her eyes were filled with worry as she entered. "Have you heard the latest?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Derek's making rounds again, trying to convince some of the newer homeowners that we only ousted him because we're afraid of working hard for our community." My heart sank. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to mask the concern in my voice. "He claims we conspired against him and that we're attempting to control the narrative around here. Some of the newer folks believe him. A few of them even said they would consider joining his new group." For a moment, I felt the storm clouds gather, a familiar anxiety creeping back in. I turned to Mrs. Thompson, holding her gaze. "This isn't the end, not after all we've worked for. We just need to address it directly. If we let him spread misinformation without a counter, we risk losing everything." With a deep breath, I made a decision. We'll call an emergency meeting. Let's lay bare the truth. We'll present how the HOA functions now, showcase our commitments, and most importantly, remind everyone of the power of community. As the meeting unfolded, the tension was palpable. Neighbors gathered again, this time with a mix of excitement and fear. I stood at the head of the table, ready to face the challenge head-on. "We've come so far, and we can't let the past drag us down," I started, my voice steady, gathering momentum. "Derek wants to paint us in a bad light, to suggest that we're incapable of leading. But what he doesn't understand is that we have each other. One by one, we shared our stories, the fear we once felt and the hard work everyone had put into overcoming his tyranny. We highlighted the positive changes that had come from our collective commitment and the ways we were fostering a transparent environment moving forward. As the meeting progressed, it was clear who had the strength. The community. The doubts that had seeded within the room slowly transformed into resolute confidence. Just as I had hoped, new and old residents alike rallied together, eager to speak up about their own experiences and the changes they had seen since we took a stand against Derek. As the meeting concluded, I felt a surge of pride wash over me. We had not only reinforced our community but also laid the groundwork for future resilience against anyone who might threaten it. The fair followed the subsequent weeks, revealing the bonds that had formed. We danced, laughed, and celebrated what we had created together, an unshakable web of trust and cooperation flowing through the streets of our neighborhood. And though Derek would always remain part of our story, he now existed as a mere footnote rather than the main character. Together, We had edited the narrative of our lives, and every homeowner in our community committed to fostering an environment that would prevent a resurgence of Derek's kind of toxicity. The sun set as the fair continued, illuminating smiles and laughter against the backdrop of twinkling lights. Underneath the canopy of stars, I felt an overwhelming sense of hope for what the future held. This was only the beginning of our chapter, and together, we would ensure that it would be one woven with respect, compassion, and the insatiable spirit of community. Finally, as I glanced across the joyful crowd that had transformed into my family, I realized that home had never felt so safe, so vibrant, and so alive. And in that moment, I knew the greatest battles can lead to the most beautiful victories, if only we dare to stand together.